a 300-pound boulder traveling at terminal velocity, fire that sticks to your skin and burns underwater, towers taller than your castle walls rolling toward you on wooden wheels. Medieval siege weapons weren't the clunky catapults Hollywood shows you. They were precision-engineered instruments of psychological and physical destruction that could reduce stone fortresses to rubble and defenders to screaming casualties. Forget the movie version where heroes dodge projectiles in slow motion. Real siege weapons killed from distances you couldn't run from, with impacts you couldn't survive, using physics and fire that your medieval mind couldn't comprehend. Once you understand what these machines actually did, every castle defense scene becomes laughable fantasy. Stand on castle walls and watch a trebuchet being assembled 300 yards away. You'd see a wooden frame rising 50 feet high, a massive counterweight being loaded with stones, sometimes 10 tons or more. Then it fires. The arm swings up faster than your eye can track. You'd hear a sound like thunder, then see a boulder the size of a wine barrel arcing through the sky. The impact you'd feel through your boots. Stone explodes. Defenders disappear in clouds of dust. The engineering was brilliant. A 10-ton counterweight dropping 10 feet could throw a 300-pound projectile 300 yards with devastating accuracy. After ranging shots, crews could hit the same section of wall repeatedly until entire sections collapsed. Trebuchets turned physics into terror, and defenders had no answer except hoping the next shot missed. But watching your walls crumble from a distance was just the beginning. What happened when the enemy reached your gates was far more personal. The sound would start at dawn. Boom, boom, boom. Rhythmic, relentless, each impact shaking dust from the ceiling. You'd be inside the castle listening to your defenses dying one blow at a time. A battering ram was simple. A massive log, iron-capped, suspended from a mobile housing. A ram weighing several tons, swung by 20 men, generated kinetic energy even the thickest gates couldn't resist indefinitely. Each impact sent vibrations through the gatehouse. After a few dozen hits, cracks formed. After 100, iron bands started bending. The psychological effect was devastating. That sound reminded everyone inside that their defenses were temporary. The ram didn't need sophistication, just relentless force that made your strongest defense your weakest link. And if you thought a broken gate was terrifying, imagine watching something tall as your walls rolling closer, unstoppable, bridging the one advantage that kept you alive. You'd watch them building it for days. A wooden tower rising 60 feet high, wrapped in wet hides mounted on wheels. Then it would start moving. The tower would roll forward, hundreds of men pushing from inside. You'd shoot arrows, they'd bounce off. You'd drop stones, they'd crater the roof but not stop the advance. The tower kept coming. Stand on ramparts when a siege tower reaches your wall and you'd experience something Hollywood never shows. Your defensive advantage disappearing. The drawbridge would drop. Suddenly, you weren't defending from superior position. You were fighting man-to-man, except the enemy had 50 fresh soldiers pouring through. Siege towers didn't just breach walls, they brought overwhelming force directly to defenders who'd thought themselves safe. You'd think nothing could be more desperate than mechanical towers designed to kill you. You'd be wrong, because sometimes the most terrifying weapon was the simplest one, and the men willing to use it. No mechanical advantage, no sophisticated engineering, just wooden ladders. And the willingness to climb them into a hail of arrows, stones, and boiling water. You'd watch ladder teams assembling at dawn, dozens of men carrying 30-foot ladders knowing most wouldn't survive the next hour. They'd charge across open ground under constant fire, stand on a wall during a ladder assault, and you'd experience true desperation. Ladders would slam against stones, you'd try to push them off, but men would be climbing faster than you could react. You'd drop stones, climbers would use shields. You'd pour boiling water, they'd scream but keep climbing. The engineering insight was terrifying. Ladders were disposable. Each ladder could funnel 50 men to the walls. 10 ladders meant 500 attackers on your ramparts in minutes. Just waves of men treating death as a step on the climb to victory. Once a ladder held, chaos followed. Archers panicked, swordsmen broke formation, and the gate that once seemed impenetrable became meaningless. But human desperation could only take you so far. What broke defenders completely wasn't courage or numbers, it was fire that defied nature itself. You'd smell it first, a sharp chemical stench that made your eyes water. Then you'd see the flames. Defenders would pour water on them. The fire would burn brighter. Greek fire was medieval napalm, a liquid incendiary that stuck to surfaces and couldn't be extinguished with water. The exact formula was a Byzantine state secret we still don't know. You'd watch liquid flames spraying from bronze siphons, spreading across water, turning the sea itself into burning hell. The psychological effect broke soldiers completely. On land, Greek fire came in ceramic grenades thrown from walls. You'd see the pots shatter, watch flames explode outward. The fire clung to armor and clothes, burning through leather and metal. Greek fire broke the fundamental rules of nature, and soldiers' minds broke with them. You thought the trebuchet was bad. At least those boulders killed quickly. But systematic fire from above turned your fortress into an oven, and there was nowhere left to hide. You'd smell the pitch before you saw flames. Then the sky would light up, hundreds of fire arrows arcing overhead. They'd hit roofs, hay stores, wooden buildings. Within minutes, the castle would be burning in a dozen places. Watch a coordinated fire arrow attack and you'd see systematic targeting. First volley hits stables, panicked horses cause chaos. Second volley targets grain storage. Third volley aims at wooden buildings near walls. The smoke was as dangerous as flames. Thick, black, choking smoke reduced visibility to nothing. After sustained bombardment, defenders' eyes would stream continuously. Every breath would taste of ash. You'd stand there watching the sky turn orange, knowing each volley brought suffocation closer. Fire from above turned castles into funeral pyres, and defenders into firefighters who couldn't save themselves. While fire created chaos overhead, another weapon worked with cold mathematical precision, turning every exposed moment into potential death. While trebuchets took minutes to reload, you'd see manganels firing every 30 seconds. Smaller projectiles, shorter range, but constant harassment that ground defenders down through sheer volume. Manganels used torsion springs, launching stones weighing 20 to 50 pounds in flat arcs. The trajectory meant you couldn't predict impact points. Stones would shatter on walls, sending razor-sharp fragments everywhere. Stand on a wall during manganel bombardment and you'd experience sensory overload. A stone would explode to your left. You'd turn, another would hit to your right. There was no rhythm to predict, just constant, random death from above. Manganels didn't need to kill everyone, they just needed to break defenders' will to stay exposed. After hours of bombardment, even the bravest soldiers started flinching at shadows, unable to tell what was real threat and what was terror. And just when you thought constant bombardment was the worst precision warfare could offer, you'd learn what real accuracy meant. From 200 yards away, you'd hear the snap of release. A heavy bolt the size of your arm would materialize. The man next to you would jerk backward, the bolt punching completely through his torso and into the man behind him. Ballistae were scaled-up crossbows. Draw weights exceeded 1,000 pounds. The bolts were sharpened wooden shafts 4 to 6 feet long, weighing 5 to 10 pounds each. You'd watch a ballista bolt punch through a wooden shield, through the man holding it, through his armor, and embed in the stone wall behind him. Crews reloaded in about a minute, sustained precision fire targeting officers and anyone who looked important. Stand on those walls now and you'd understand. Every time you moved, you were gambling with physics you couldn't outrun. Ballista killed silently, precisely, and repeatedly, and there was nowhere to hide. But Ballista at least made sound. What came next was worse, death that arrived with no warning at all. Smaller than Ballistae but more accurate, Springolds filled the role of modern sniper rifles. You'd never hear them fire, you'd just see defenders suddenly collapse, iron darts piercing skulls from impossible distances. Springolds used steel springs rather than torsion, generating tremendous force in a compact frame. The projectiles were foot-long iron darts designed for penetration. They were the hidden killers of medieval sieges, set up behind battlements, inside towers, or even on mobile carts to snipe with terrifying precision. When released, the arms snapped forward with a speed too fast for the eye to follow. Stand on a wall during Springold attacks and you'd watch the systematic elimination of command structure. An officer would step forward to direct archers. A dart would take him in the throat. Another officer would move to replace him. Another dart. Their psychological impact was immense. Soldiers began to fear standing still. Messengers ran low to the ground. Even kings and nobles stayed behind thicker walls. A single Springold crew could silence a section of the enemy's wall by picking off anyone who dared to look over the parapet. Unlike catapults or trebuchets, which relied on brute force, Springolds were about surgical precision. Each shot sent a message. Nowhere on the battlefield was truly safe. And in the eerie silence that followed a hit, men realized the medieval age had its own snipers, cold, mechanical, and merciless. But at least you could see all these weapons working. What broke defenders' minds completely was the terror you couldn't see, the patient destruction happening beneath your feet. You wouldn't see these weapons working. You'd just wake up one morning and discover a section of wall undermined, ready to collapse. Siege hooks were long poles with metal hooks, used to pry apart stone blocks from wall joints. You'd see poles extending from covered approaches, crews working them back and forth, gradually loosening mortar. Borers were human-powered drills used to create holes in walls or gates. Progress was measured in inches per day, but once a hole penetrated, attackers could widen it until structural integrity failed. The real terror was the waiting, knowing something below was eating away at the foundation, but never knowing where or when it would give out. You'd stand on walls that had survived trebuchets, withstood rams, repelled towers and ladders, burned through Greek fire, only to feel vibrations beneath your feet and realize none of it mattered. When a section finally collapsed, it was sudden and catastrophic. You'd hear grinding sounds, then watch the entire section tumble inward. Sometimes defenders tried to counter by digging their own tunnels or flooding the attackers' works, but it was often too late. Siege hooks and borers didn't just destroy stone, they destroyed confidence. They proved that no fortress, no matter how thick its walls, could stand forever against patience, persistence, and the quiet engineering of war. Movie sieges show dramatic individual heroism, protagonists dodging projectiles, defenders holding indefinitely. Stand through a real siege and you'd experience something completely different. Systematic, mechanical destruction where individual heroism meant nothing. Hollywood shows catapults firing huge rocks that miss by yards. Real trebuchets range their targets and then hit the same spot repeatedly with precision that would terrify modern soldiers. The accuracy wasn't luck, it was calculated mathematics applied to gravity and leverage. Movies show fire as dramatic but survivable. Real incendiary weapons created situations where survival wasn't an option, just choices about how to die. Greek fire particularly represented nightmare fuel that broke soldiers' understanding of how the world worked. The siege weapons that actually decided medieval warfare weren't always the spectacular projectile launchers. They were the patient tools, borers, hooks, rams, that worked slowly but inevitably, giving defenders time to understand exactly how they'd lose while being unable to prevent it. And the simplest weapons, ladders, killed more attackers than any sophisticated siege engine. Because medieval warfare ultimately came down to men willing to climb into death against men too exhausted to stop them. Modern people think they understand medieval siege warfare from games and movies, but reality was watching a 300-pound boulder arc toward your position and knowing you couldn't outrun physics. Hearing the ram's rhythm and counting impacts until your gate failed. Smelling Greek fire and understanding that water couldn't save you. You wouldn't survive a minute against any of these weapons, not because you lack courage, but because medieval siege engineering specifically evolved to make survival impossible. Your modern psychology would break watching a siege tower advance despite every defensive measure. Your body would fail under sustained bombardment. Your will would crack hearing the ram's rhythm, counting down to inevitable breach. And that's exactly what these weapons were designed to do, not just break walls, but break the humans defending them, making surrender seem rational and continued resistance seem insane. 10 weapons. Centuries of refinement. One purpose, making castles and the people inside them equally indefensible.